Hi, welcome to Professor Kev show. I got my friends from Novasta with us. Good evening. I guess good afternoon, ladies. How y'all doing?
Good, how are you?
Just living
Good.
the
How are
dream,
you,
my friend.
Professor Kev?
It's good to
Good.
see you all again.
Yeah.
All right. So, Arianna, let's start with you. Give me a little bit of background about yourself before we get into the show.
Yeah, of course. So I'm a junior at Boston Latin School, Sofia as well. And I grew up actually in the DC area, but I moved to Boston around when I was 11. And to get a little bit into why Novasta was started. So growing up, I grew up with my grandparents a lot, and they had lived through the Great Famine in China. And so growing up, I was always taught these ideals of never wasting any food. And so when I did grow up, I started volunteering at food kitchens, and we would spend hours upon hours preparing these meals for the food insecure. But when I would walk home, I'd walk past a lot of these restaurants and I'd see them throwing away food. And to me, that's obviously very heartbreaking because I just seen so many people that are obviously in need of that food, and also just these ideals that my grandparents had instilled in me. Um, so I wanted to do something about it, and I got together Sophia and Ruth, who are the most amazing co-founders ever, and we were able to contact these restaurants, make partnerships with a lot of them in the Boston area, and ever since then we started diverting and transporting their excess food to local shelters and food banks in the area.
And that's why we asked that question, Ariana. Sophia, welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, so I'm Sofia. I'm also a junior at Boston Latin School. I grew up in Boston for the most part, but I have also lived in Tanzania and South Africa. And when Ariana had this idea and sort of brought me on to contribute to it, I thought it was really a unique approach, but also super important to address issues of food waste and food insecurity as I'm living in Massachusetts. I see it here, but I've also been able to see those issues in other parts of the world as well.
All right, Ruth, what made you get involved in this idea?
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having us on here. I'm Ruth, a little bit opposite from Ariana. I grew up in Boston. Now I'm in the DMV area, so I go to school in Maryland. And a little bit about like me and why I kind of decided to get involved with Novasta. I'm really passionate about environmental advocacy, and I think specifically the element that we tackle in Novasta that's a really unique approach to diverting food waste is really understated in the way that it has an impact on the environment. I don't think a lot of people realize that food waste is contributing to approximately 10% of global greenhouse gas emissions. And that's a really large percentage. It's greater than the entire aviation industry combined. So I think that seeing that environmental impact that we're having is something that really drew me to Novasa, and I'm so excited to be here.
So that's a nice introduction. So let's talk a little bit about Novasta. Like, why did you start it? You kind of hit on it a little bit, but let's go back to that again, Ariana.
Yeah, of course. So, obviously, we saw this problem within our community, but there's also been a lot of statistics that I think are really contradicting. So in Massachusetts, we see definitely, I think Sophia mentioned this before, but one in every three families in Massachusetts experience food insecurity, while around 40% of our food systems and food produced is usually gone to the landfill. And obviously, we see that there's two problems here, and the problem in one place is actually a solution in the other place. And so I definitely wanted to do something about that. And ever since then we've expanded a lot across the nation, but also to a lot of other countries as well. And it's been amazing seeing the amount of kids that also recognize this problem in their own respective communities. And we've been able to come together, and carry out the mission of Novasta.
So talk to me about what's been your approach getting the food to people who need it. Because when you told me about it, I'm like, why hasn't someone done that? I mean, it's obvious, right? I mean, we have extra food, we have people need it, it doesn't go to landfill. It's kind of obvious. But what was your experience when you reached out to restaurants? Were they open to it?
I think it kind of varies. We've reached out to so many different restaurants, grocery stores, essentially just any establishment that tends to have some sort of food waste, and some are very open to it, and some are not. I think a lot of establishments are afraid of being held liable for anything that might go wrong. And a lot of people are unaware that there is actually federal legislation that prevents anyone who donates food from being held liable for anything that might go wrong. So part of our mission has also just been educating restaurants on that. And there's also legislation in each different state that sort of varies from state to state that is also working to prevent food waste. So essentially, we just make partnerships. We reach out to a lot of different restaurants, grocery stores, etc., and we tell them a bit about ourselves, and we sort of emphasize that our volunteers are the ones who will be doing all the work. So it's really no additional work for the restaurants. And most of our volunteers are high school students. And so high school students volunteer and they're able to get community service hours for picking up food from the restaurants that we partner with and transporting it to shelters or churches or just any establishment that redirects the food to those in need.
Which leads me right into the next question. That's what I was going to ask. What do you do once you collect the food? How do you know where to bring it? Like some places may have a meal program, some people only giving away food on Tuesdays. How do you mix and match to help people?
Yeah, I think a lot of another big aspect of our organization is making these partnerships with the shelters in the area. We tend to try to make shelters that are in close proximity to a lot of restaurants, and that way the volunteers are able to really efficiently direct that to the shelters. But kind of going back to your previous question on, it seems like a really simple approach and solution, and why people haven't really done it in great amounts before. I think a huge issue is that especially within this area, the communities that we live in are really disconnected, and there's are a lot of statistics showing that people are coming together less, having less face-to-face interactions. And so, even though one restaurant might be right next door to a church serving the food insecure, and that restaurant might be throwing away food every day, I think the lack of community interactions has been kind of a block between them being able to help each other and solving both their problems. And I think it was really fortunate for us to be able to see both those instances and be able to be that bridge between those two disconnects.
I agree with what you just said. I'm former chairman of the food pantry in my town,
Wow.
and you would see that. You're like, well, we have a food pantry. You do? Yeah, just for 10 years now. It's relatively new, like they just that disconnect of just not knowing,
Yeah.
we start a program with local farmers, hey, we'll give away vouchers for people to come to your farm stand and help you. It helps them, healthy food helps you. And when I first proposed it, they're like, what's the catch? I'm like, you'll make money, they'll eat better. No catch, but it
Yeah.
just there's those like you said, it's different communities and sometimes they just don't interact. And it's just to me, I'm kind of the guy in the middle. I'm like, it makes me sad to see that,
Mhm.
that we're struggling. So, all right, so big picture, we seem to be doing well. What's the goal? What are you hoping to accomplish in the future with this idea?
So I wanted to bridge a little bit quickly with like the last question you asked to
Yeah.
add on. So I think something else that we've seen is a lack of mobilization, especially from youth. A lot of our volunteer base, we try to educate them before they actually tackle the problem because there is this problem of a lot of students and youth across the nation and even across the globe that we've contacted that they're really interested in this problem. But I think there are youth in their communities that would be willing to participate but just aren't educated on how they can get involved. So I think that's a big thing with Novasta. We really do want to keep expanding. If anyone wants to start a chapter, we're always open to having a conversation with them. I think currently we have chapters across the globe as well in Thailand and Bangkok, in the United Arab Emirates. And then I think we're also starting up in Indonesia and in Spain, Barcelona. So five different countries. And I think that's just really speaks to the volume in which Novasa can make an impact on a global scale and how we're always looking to expand, always looking for students that are interested and have innovative ideas that they can present. We've talked to so many students with different ideas that can help build on our mission that aren't directly related to this cause, like videography or even data and incorporating those into like our mission. So I think, yeah, that's something that we're really looking forward to doing.
So what's going to be the best way for people to reach out to you? How can they learn more about the idea? How can they get involved?
Yeah, so I wanted to add a couple more things really quickly. So I think that we also have so we have three pillars in Novasta, and we have food insecurity, food waste, but also advocacy and policy. So especially these past couple months, and this past year, we've been trying to mobilize more youth that are starting these chapters to get involved with both their local and state legislatures, because I think there's a lot of legislation that's being drafted kind of to alleviate the food waste and food insecurity problems, but not necessarily bridging the two. And lobbying for that to happen can definitely make a large scale impact. And we're also part of the Zero Food Waste Coalition, which is a coalition across the nation with institutions like Harvard Law School and also programs like Too Good to Go that are all working towards the same problem of alleviating food waste. And I think that's something that we do want to see more youth get involved in because we're one of the few youth organizations that do that. So having more individuals that are interested in like-minded youth contact us, connect with us on LinkedIn. We're also having our positions reopen. So for the national and for the global board, anyone who's interested in applying, we will have that up on LinkedIn, and I'll send you the document for that,
Good.
Professor Kev. And essentially, I want to just go through a couple things that, in case viewers are interested. So like funding operations directors, funding operations team, so people that would be in charge of finding grants and funding opportunities, a chapter development team. So we are often the ones, just Sophia, Ariana, and I, that talk to every single person, get on a Zoom and talk to them about starting a chapter. And I think that's great. But once we start to expand more, it becomes a little bit more difficult to juggle having meetings with chapters every single day that people want to start up. So I think specifically dedicating a team to helping them develop and making sure the operations go smoothly so that we can see the most amount of success. And then external relations directors, advocacy and policy directors, communications and public engagement directors, and then the teams that go with those, and then a social media team as well. I think social media is definitely for the youth a great way to get more engagement. We're on Instagram and TikTok and LinkedIn, so I think those are great ways for anyone who's interested to follow us, like follow any progress that we're making, contact us with any ideas. And yeah.
Awesome. I appreciate y'all taking the time to come on the show. And as always, thanks for being my friend.
Thank you so much,
Thank you
Professor
so much
Kev.
for having us.
Thank you.